Welcome to Egg
and Bean
Podcast. I'm Sunny.
And I'm Nathan.
And welcome to our podcast where we talk about the growing pains in life.
And then we bandage it up in transport.
That's right. Due to popular demand, we are now talking about the emergency medical services.
Ooh.
I know everybody's been asking for us to kind of share our journey, our experience with EMS as a EMT, and so we're finally doing it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah,
this is where it all started, honestly.
It is where it all started. It's how Nate and I met, how we became friends, and really the start of our careers. So we're really excited to start this little episode about it. I guess we'll start off with what got you into EMS. Why did you want to become an EMT?
So it was actually a long lost dream of mine. So when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I want to be on an ambulance. I want to do that. That sounds cool. And then you just kind of forget, you go through life and things happen. But then I was involved in a car accident. So during that car accident, I was like taken out of the vehicle. I was assessed by them. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I want to do this. And then I kind of forgot a little bit again.
Nate's memory refreshes every 10 minutes.
Like, wow, but to be fair, I was healing.
Right.
I was recovering from the accident.
This is the accident where you were paralyzed, right?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't necessarily paralyzed, but I was bedridden.
Bedridden, yeah.
So then I was working at Disneyland at the time. And one of my friends that worked there, he was going to EMT school. And he was telling me all about it. He was telling me that he wants to do fire. And I was so excited. I was like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
So then I quit my job at Disneyland. I went to school, and then I became an EMT.
You're like, forget Mickey. Forget Mickey Mouse. I'm going to be an EMT.
Bigger fish to fry. What about you, Sunny?
I think I've heard bits and pieces of that story. So it's really cool to hear your journey all together in one. Mine's very different. So unlike you, I didn't grow up wanting to be an EMT. It was never something that was on my radar. I've never heard of it, really. None of my friends were EMTs or wanted to be an EMT. So my dream growing up was to just be in the health field, but not be an EMT, you know? So I think a lot of Asians will relate to this where, if you like the health field, you want to be a doctor, right? And so I was interested, it was an option in my head to be a doctor. And when I was in undergrad, I was doing a general bioscience major, and I took this class that got me into public health. And I loved it a lot. So, I realized that maybe my path was to be a researcher and to go to grad school and get my PhD, right? So that was the original plan.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, right? And so I had research opportunities taken away from me. We all got sent home. And then
everything was sidetracked.
Yeah, everything was sidetracked. And I had a crisis. I was having a meltdown because I didn't know what I was doing with my life, because these research opportunities was what I was banking on to help me figure out whether or not this is something I wanted to do for the rest of my life, right? And
it's kind of like a turning point for you.
Yeah, it was a huge turning point. And, because like I said, the plan was finish undergrad, get some experience in research, go to grad school, move on, right?
Yeah.
But, like I said, it was taken away from me. And at the time, everything was shut down. And I was freaking out. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I realized that maybe it wasn't right to go to grad school right away after I graduated undergrad. And, the question I asked myself was, well, what can I do to stick my little toes into the health world, just to get a glimpse of what it was or what it actually is like. And during this time, I was still at school in Pennsylvania in undergrad. And there was this one night, me and my friends were hanging out. We were standing out in the balcony. And I saw an ambulance pull up to my apartment building. And, it's college, right? It's a Friday night. Like, what do you think was happening, right? Like, people were partying a little too hard, right? And so somebody was carried out for whatever reason. And we were all standing on the balcony watching this happen. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, right? Didn't think too much about it, right? Genuinely didn't think too much about it. And then, as I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing, making that decision to not go to grad school right away, which was a huge decision for me because, not that my parents were necessarily forcing me to go to grad school, but they were expecting me to go because I had told them I was going to go, and I had even started my applications. And, I even took my GREs already. Nice. Me and sound guy, Mr. Pet over here, right? We studied for the GREs together, and I actually convinced him. I was like, hey, take the GREs with me, please. Because at the time he was on the fence of whether or not he wanted to take his GREs, right? And go ahead and do his master's too. And I convinced him to. Turns out he ended up going to grad school and I didn't that year.
Well, you got stuck with me, huh?
Anyways, this is taking too long, but I decided that EMT was going to be my route. I was going to try and take a crack at it. It was going to be my way to see whether or not I even like the health field, right? And of course, one of the few jobs during COVID that weren't taken away was being an EMT. We were all basically forced to work. And a lot of us, a lot of EMTs had left during that time because nobody wanted to work, which is fair. Anyways, I stayed home here in California, took my EMT course, and ended up here.
Now we're
here, and then I met this dummy over here.
Yeah, what's up?
And now we're doing a podcast somehow. So I don't know how that ended up that way.
One day we just showed up with the podcast.
But yeah, it was kind of, I think, to sum it all up, it was my way to get some experience in the health field. And to me, it was like, if I'm interested in the health field, I don't want to be that person who goes and gets a fancy master's degree and decides never worked a day and decides to run a hospital. So that's the thing, is a lot of masters in public health majors, they will go and make decisions for hospitals and all sorts of different things in the health field. Not
knowing how the system works.
Exactly. Never really understood what it's like to be a nurse or an ER tech, a radiology tech, right? So to me, it was important to experience, I like to call the dirt bottom. The dirt freaking bottom, right? Like, that was important to me. And, that's how I ended up here. So
nice.
And was honestly, the plan too initially was to be an EMT for 6 months, right?
Now look at you.
6 months. And then
what is that, 2 years later now?
Yeah, it's funny because at month 4 or 5, I was ready to tap out. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gonna do my 6 months and just get out.
And then what happened? You became my partner?
Yeah, that's literally what happened. I became your partner. I realized that there was so much about this field that I loved. There were so many things about this field that I didn't love. And there were so many things about this field that I wanted to change. I met great people, like you and many, many of my closest friends. And I just couldn't leave.
It's hard to leave.
Yeah, and the job itself is, you'll hear this a lot, but a lot of EMTs who go off and do different things will always say that what their time as an EMT was the best time of their lives. Yeah. And despite all of the bad things,
everything that happens in EMS.
Yeah. I think it really bonds a lot of us too, because we
all go through the same
It's like
stuff.
The military, sometimes it's really like that. But anyways, my story is a bit long, but you know me. I like to drag out my stories a little bit. We get a lot of questions, right, on how to pass the NREMT. And before we go into answering how we do that, the NREMT is our qualifying exam of sorts, right? So it's
what does NREMT stand for?
National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians. Yes. So, it's our national test that we take after you take your EMT course to basically certify you as an EMT.
Get your license.
Right. So it's that big test, basically, that you need to pass. And, I get messages from many of you guys asking about the NREMT, my experience with it, any advice. And so I thought we would cover that real quick. So,
okay.
So what was your experience with the NREMT?
So I was never really good at school, taking tests, anything like that. I passed the National Registry on the 3rd try.
How many tries do you get usually? I don't remember.
I kept hearing different answers. I heard 3, I heard 6, but regardless, I went with 3 and I had so much anxiety. But the first time I went in, I didn't read the questions too carefully, I guess. Second time either. But what really, really helped me out is I paid for softwares and books and stuff to like help me with NREMT. Mm-hmm. There's this certain software that I used that had previous answers from previous year's tests. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty similar, so I used that. And
just a lot of practice.
Yeah, a lot of practice, lots of studying, more than I've ever done in my life, honestly.
So I think this is great because you and I have very different experiences with the NREMT. I am a school person by heart, right? So, the NREMT comparatively was on the easier side for me, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say that my advice, what I did was, one, I already had a decent background in basic anatomy, biology, because I took that all in undergrad, right? Because I went to, I got a degree in biobehavioral health, and so that helped. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, what was important or something I would advise, I guess, is when you're going through EMT school, a lot of people will just kind of not pay attention. That's the thing, is use that time to study what you need to do. Mm-hmm. Like, those are quick pace classes. Yeah, they're really quick.
Super fast.
So you need to be on top of it. It's not very long, so just buckle down for however long your school is, mm-hmm. and actually take that time to study. Don't just try to wing by the school.
It's not going to work.
Yeah, and then try to cram for the NREMT, right? So I think that's my advice, not just for the NREMT, but for anything, for mm-hmm. school, anything school-wise, right? Study while you're taking the classes. It makes it a lot more manageable, and, mm-hmm.
You'll
get it. But outside resources, YouTube, paying for courses, paying for practice questions.
Something that I did was group studies.
Yeah.
So at the end of class, we would all go to Barnes and Nobles. Mm-hmm. We would have like 5 people at the table, and we're all studying. If we have a question, we ask the group, and then we all try to explain it together, and then we learn.
Exactly, and you're just pointing out another thing that I think is really helpful is trying to teach to someone, because mm-hmm. to be able to teach something to someone, you have to really understand mm-hmm. what the content is, or any, the facts or whatever. So being able to teach it. So that's really cool. Taking turns trying to explain it to each other. Mm-hmm.
Getting different perspectives.
Right.
And different people have different experiences.
And I think that's the thing, is no matter what your background is, I think a lot of people ask me, what courses should they take, mm-hmm. To help supplement their studying or whatever. Ultimately, whatever your background is, I think it's doable, right? Mm-hmm. You just need to really buckle down and do it. So,
like with you had experience with previous classes of anatomy and stuff that.
Yeah.
When I went into school, all I knew is that I wanted to do EMT, and I had no previous experience with mm-hmm. healthcare or anything of the body. So I went in there blind, and there's people like you that had anatomy, and they had the EMT prep course that mm-hmm. I didn't even know existed. So if I was able to do it, you guys could do it.
Yeah. we all ended up here. And in fact, when I became an EMT and, started working with Nate had a whole year on me. So he had been an EMT for a whole year before I even started. And I learned so much from Nate. Like, Nate has taught me a good 60% of what I know as
You're being
an EMT.
Generous.
No, a good 60%. That's what I'm saying is, like, I'm good with school, but mm-hmm. there's a lot of things that you learn in the field, and finding really nice people that you become friends with, or even not, just someone you work with, can give you a lot of insight. You can learn a lot from them. I mean, mm-hmm. Nate was the one who taught me how to drive Code 3.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, lights and sirens. That's another thing. Code 3 equals lights and sirens.
Emergency, wee-woos.
Yeah, wee-woos. So Nate was the one who actually taught me. My first Code 3 was with Nate. So I've just, but among other things, like, you taught me how to use the vent, right? Mm-hmm. How the vent works.
Well, not use it, because that's the
not use it, but like how you could use it. I didn't actually use it on a patient, but like we would sit.
How it works.
Yeah, how it works. Like, we would sit in the ambulance, and he would just mm-hmm. kind of show me. Like, finding good people, and I would say that that's my final advice. Obviously, if you guys have any more questions, we will do our best to answer them in the comments, or messages of sorts. But yeah, now that we've covered that, because I thought that was important, we want to help out our peoples, you know. What are your long-term goals with EMS, right? A lot of people view EMS, especially EMT, as a stepping stone job.
Yeah.
What are your goals with that?
So when I first became an EMT, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in healthcare. I just knew I wanted to do it. But then working in a CCT shift alongside with nurses and seeing how they work and the many things that you could do as a nurse, my ultimate goal is to become like a registered nurse.
A registered nurse, yeah. You want to go through real quick for the people what critical care transport is for CCT?
So critical care transport, it's higher level of care than BLS. So BLS is like the basics.
Basic life support.
Basic life support. And critical care transport, you work with 2 EMTs and 1 nurse. And basically you go from small hospitals that can't handle this patient to bigger specialty hospitals that can.
Yeah.
And we make sure that they get there safely.
Yeah. That's when we met many of our best friends.
Yes.
So we became friends with a lot of nurses, and I'm sure that, you know, kind of also made you want to be a nurse, maybe.
Yeah, because we worked with a lot of badass nurses.
Yeah.
Like, they were cool. Like, the things that they've done. Yeah. Especially this one nurse named Frank.
Shout out Frank.
Yeah.
Frankie Poo. Frankie Poo's actually in a good amount of our videos that we've made before in the past. Frank definitely is someone that I look up to. I think he was like 12 years of Army medic, became a nurse. He was a flight nurse at one point, ER, ICU. He's done it all. Yeah. I've always said, honestly, if I'm ever on my last leg, you know, about to
croak,
give me Frank. You know, I want Frank right there, right now, ASAP.
Just the demeanor that he has with critical patients. Like, he's so calm. He's just like, we got it.
Yeah, but I think our point really is like these people that we met, like, have, you know, helped us figure out what we want to do. And I think a lot of EMTs will go into the job not really sure what direction they want to go, or they'll go into it with, you know, a certain goal, but then change, because you get to meet so many different kinds of people in the medical field. And I think that's really cool, because it's definitely changed my path for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, did you ever think you would want to be a nurse?
No.
Absolutely not, right? So, no, like, it's just a really cool job. Like, it really kind of allows you to figure out where you want to go. And honestly, whether or not you even like the health field or not. Yeah. Yeah, because maybe it's not for you. Like, you don't like it, and that's fine.
Honestly, I went into EMS not knowing the difference between IFT and 911. I thought it was all the same.
Me too. I'm sure a lot of us felt that way too. We'll get into the flaws of EMT schools in another episode, but there are definitely a few things that should have been taught, or at least discussed. But yeah, for me, like I said, I wanted to be a researcher, right? And I didn't necessarily ever think I would want to be an EMT, right? But then when I became an EMT, you know, I was like, paramedics are kind of cool, you know. That's a little cool. They get to do things out in the field, you know. And this is just my personal opinion. Like, there's nothing against, you know, working in a hospital. I just don't think being in a hospital is for me, right? I've learned that about myself, which is, I don't really want to work in a hospital. Yeah,
honestly, it takes some getting used to, especially you're out in the field and you're in different places. Right. Being in a hospital, it's kind of confining. It's
a little claustrophobic for me, right? So, yeah, I figured out that the hospital setting's not for me. I like being out and about. That's what I love about the job. We're all over the place. It's really cool. And I realized that being a paramedic would be something I would want to do. And then, you know, for those of you guys who don't know, I have a love for Top Gun.
A little too
don't
much.
get me wrong. I don't want to necessarily fly a plane. You know, I like more so to imagine it. Like, that's really cool, right? But I was like, hey, there's a thing called a flight medic. That'd be pretty sick. So, you know, it'd be really cool to, you know, ride in a helicopter and go out and do what I do.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is one of my goals with EMS, is to be a flight medic for a little bit. That's going to take me a while, you know, to get there. I got to go to medic school and everything too. Also, for those of you guys who don't know, medic and paramedic are interchangeable. And then paramedic/medic is different than an EMT. I think we need to like clarify that, because I think people don't understand the difference. I would say even nurses call us paramedics when we're not paramedics.
Yeah. Like, the paramedics are here. I'm
yeah.
Like, yes!
You're like, yes, I'm a paramedic.
I got a promotion.
But anyways, yeah, so that's, I think, what I want to do. But ultimately, I still do want to do research. So, you know, I think I've mentioned this a few times. I am in graduate school right now to get my, you know, to get my master's and then hopefully get my PhD to be a researcher. And then I just thought EMS research would be really cool. You know, like I said, I always thought research was really cool, but I didn't necessarily know what niche or field, I wanted to do or kind of study and research. And I found my place, you know, I found the people that I love. And I found the people. Something
that you care about enough to fix it.
Exactly. And this field is very new. You know, I think a lot of people don't know that this field is basically only 50 or so years old. And so it's very, very new. And that also means that there are a lot of things that should be fixed and could be worked on, right?
There's always room for improvement.
Yeah, there's always room for improvement. Exactly, right? Even for the fields that have been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. So there's a lot of room for improvement. And I would love to be a part of that. So I think it starts with research too, you know, some tangible, hard evidence, and to just push our progress into the future, I guess.
Nice.
So, yeah. So that's my little long-term goals with EMT. My question for you, Nate, is, you know how I mentioned earlier that a lot of people view EMT as a stepping stone job? Do you think that's a good or bad thing? Because I've heard both.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
I think it helps people to grow and go into the right path that they want to take. And I feel like as a EMS company, it's your job to train your people to be able to grow and get to where they want to be. You don't want to keep them forever, you know?
Yeah. I think that perspective I definitely agree with. I will say the only part I would touch on is that some people, because they view it as a stepping stone job to be a nurse or a doctor, they don't take it seriously.
They should.
Exactly. And I think my whole point is this is, yes, a small part beginning of your career, and this isn't where you want to end up, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do your job to the best of your ability, right? And how you perform as an EMT is going to follow you later on, right? Yeah. So your work ethic is your work ethic no matter what kind of job you do.
Exactly.
Yeah. So whether you're wiping the floor or performing heart surgery, right? Your work ethic is your work ethic.
Yeah. And I've spoke to so many nurses that they say they went straight to nursing school with no like patient care experience. And they say that they wish that they would have done something. So before. So EMT is perfect for anything that you want to do.
I mean, a lot of our favorite nurses were EMTs.
Yeah. And there's such great nurses now.
They're great nurses. Yeah.
Amazing nurses. I think those are all our favorites.
No, 100%. Like sometimes I'll walk into a hospital and there'll be a nurse that's just super awesome. And I'll go, you were EMT, weren't you?
Because they understand the system.
They do understand.
The nurses that don't know how the system works, they get mad at us for no reason.
Exactly. Because they don't understand. And I think that's why I said earlier that I wanted to be at the dirt bottom, right? Before I went in and tried to do anything. Like, imagine if I started just, you know, running research or wanting to do things for the field, for EMS as a whole, and was never an EMT.
How would you know where to start?
Exactly, right? Or first of all, no one would listen to me. I have no credibility. I have no network, right? I don't understand really how it works or what it's like to be an EMT. So, I I think there are so many things about this job that are really beneficial, like to you, but ultimately it is up to you to figure out if it's for you, because I think there are people in this job who genuinely do not love it, and that's okay. You don't have to love it, right? But don't torture yourself and stay here.
Yeah, or don't bring others down and make them salty because you're salty.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to dive into with that one. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit about what we love and not love so much about this field. Bye. We'll be right back. And we're back. Nate's feet stink is what we
How dare you?
Is what we discovered during the break. I just thought that you guys should know.
This is your rule.
What rule?
No shoes in the house.
Yes.
We all suffer.
Anyways, what do you love and dislike about EMS? Oh,
what I
Lord.
don't love about EMS is that I have to wear these boots that make my feet stinky.
Because they're thick. They really hold
thick
in.
and heavy, yeah.
They hold in
It's
everything.
like a greenhouse in there.
There's just like a layer of biofilm on his feet after he takes his boots off.
Now I'm not gonna get any ladies. So something that I do dislike about EMS is how money hungry healthcare is.
Oh yeah, that's not even just EMS. That's just health. That's the world in general. Yeah.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
It's part of business.
Yeah.
But they focus so much on making a profit that they overwork us to the ground.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And improper equipment. Just so many
very
things.
little sleep.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like you said, of course they're a business, right? And they have to make money. But, if our whole thing is to provide services and healthcare and promote the safety and health of our community, why do we not have the proper equipment, proper working ambulances that don't break down in the middle of the road, right? So I think, there are a lot of things that could be better. On top of that, I would say that the support that they give to the EMS, so just not even just the equipment, right?
Like
Support.
the
Emotional support, right? Just, I know we're supposed to have, people go over some rough calls with us sometimes, but that's not really implemented.
No, they leave it up to us.
Yeah, and I think that I understand maybe offering full mental health care is a little too costly and expensive, but there should be some sort of middle ground, right? Like some sort of way that we can discuss or just debrief or offload the stuff that goes on. I know that a lot of us go into this field knowing that this is stuff that we're going to see.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of us are okay with it. And ultimately, a lot of us are excited to see it, right? This sounds a little bit morbid, and it's not that we like to see people be hurt or on their worst days, but ultimately to us, it's an opportunity to see something medical, right? At least for me. I don't know about other people, but for me, it's cool. It's an opportunity to have the experience to see, whoa, like that's what happens when someone gets hit by a car at 80 miles per hour, right? And what can I do about it?
Not much.
Yeah. But, it's ultimately something that we know what we're signing up for, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're always okay after it.
Yeah, no.
And it's also the sense of, I don't know if you feel this, but there's this culture in EMS where nobody wants to admit that something affected them.
Yeah, everybody has like huge egos about
a little bit, yeah. Like nobody wants to be like, oh, that riled me up a little bit, right? Yes, we all love the adrenaline, but nobody wants to admit, that kind of hurt me a little bit.
That was a little scary.
That was a little scary, yeah. So yeah, I think the mental health support is one. I think that the scope of being an EMT could be bigger. So what that means is, for example, if we're going to use nurses and doctors, because I feel like people understand that a little bit more. So, nurses do a certain amount of things. That's their scope, right? Doctors can do a certain amount of things, and that's their scope,
and it's
right?
More.
It's more, yeah. So I guess the EMS parallel or equivalent of that is if, a paramedic is, equivalent or not equivalent,
well, they are our higher level.
They
scope.
are, higher level. But if they are on, parallel to a doctor, like a paramedic and a doctor, then nurse would be like EMT. Yeah. So, but they're not. Don't get me wrong. Like, not even the same thing. Different scope. Hypothetical, right? But I think what I'm saying is that as an EMT, we have a certain amount of things that we can do, and I would think that. Personally, I think that the scope could be higher, right? I do understand there's a level of liability when you give people like EMTs a bigger scope, right? And as if we didn't get sued enough already, right? Like, I understand that is a liability. However, I would say that a solution to that may be to
set higher standards.
Yes, set higher standards in our schools. There are a lot of EMT schools who aren't doing their jobs, right?
There's a lot of people that fly through the cracks.
Right. And so, up the standards, up the scope, and I don't know. I think that'd be a lot better for the whole system. And
get some load off of like the hospitals.
The hospitals, yeah. There's actually something I've come into contact recently is LA County has these AP units. So AP stands for Advanced Provider. And so it's a unit where there is a nurse practitioner and a medic. And so they'll show up at some of these calls and try to do what they can so that we don't have to necessarily transport to the hospital. So we're basically, take a mobile hospital. Yeah, we'll get the patient into the back of the ambulance. They'll do what they need to do. If they don't need to go to the hospital, send them out, right?
So something that in EMS that we cannot do is diagnose.
Right.
Can the NP diagnose in the field in that position?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, because I believe that nurse practitioners can prescribe medications. They can do a lot of things. They're not an MD. They're not a doctor, but they can do certain things that, allow them to determine what the patient needs and whether or not they're good to go. So yeah, I actually got the chance to work with an AP unit recently.
So cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. She got in the back of my ambulance, sutured the guy up,
ready to go.
The guy was attacked with box cutters and just had a gash just straight down his arm, on his forehead and everything. Sutured him up. Bye.
She bandaged it up and didn't
transport. Exactly. But yeah, so that ultimately means that you're not taking to the hospital for something that the ER doesn't necessarily, have the room or capacity to deal with right away. So I think that's really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
But anyways, I think that there are a lot of things that could be better about the field. I think the culture is something that I would change, So I think that a lot of EMTs want to go into fire, and so they adopt this fire military
frat boy culture
a little bit. Yeah. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a bad thing, but I think that for those of us who don't want to go into fire, we don't necessarily care to be a part of it. Yeah. So I think, yeah, I don't know. I think that also too is because a lot of people want to be firefighters but don't necessarily want to do like the medical side of things, and you get people who don't necessarily care about the medical, right?
Yeah,
and then
they're just doing it just because they want to fight fires.
But I mean, that's a deep conversation for another time. What do you like about EMS? Let's talk about the happy things.
So what I love about EMS is that it's always constantly changing. It's never the same.
Yeah.
Even if it's like the same symptoms and stuff like that, the patient's not going to present the same. Somebody could have blood pressure of 200 and presenting normal. Yeah. Versus somebody over here stroking out. Yeah. And what I like about it, it's that we're practicing medicine. So that doesn't mean that we're going to get it, or that means that it's always constantly improving and we have to keep up with it.
Right. There's a lot of variety is basically what you're saying. Yeah. So I agree. I like that every day when I show up to work, I don't know what is going to happen.
What to expect,
yeah.
right?
You know, you can show up and it's, you know, the call is something that you've seen many times, but that case or that call is going to be completely different than all the other ones. Right. So it keeps you on your toes. Like you said, I like the people I've met. Like we've already touched on, I've met, like I said, many times, some of my best friends, and we're all a little wacky, you know.
Except for me.
No, we're all a little
I'm normal.
wacky. I don't think anyone in the field is normal. We're all a little
cuckoo.
Yeah, a little weird in the head.
Especially night shift.
Yeah. I like that every time I work with someone different, everybody has the most random, different background. You know, like one day I'll work with someone was a political science major.
Wow.
Yeah. And another day I'll work with someone who was in IT for 15 years and then decided that he didn't want to sit in an office all day and quit and became an EMT. So you just hear all these different random stories from people and their backgrounds. So that's been really cool. The variety of people that comes with the variety in the job. The adrenaline rush is really cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. I think my favorite thing is driving lights and sirens, code 3.
I am like the opposite. I think driving wee woo is cool, but I'm more so I want to be in the back, right? I want to be in the back where all the drama is happening, right? Like where all the blood is, like everything. That's my ish, right? I don't necessarily want to be driving because I feel left out, you know?
Oh, I do. I get FOMO.
Don't you get FOMO?
Yeah.
You're like up there driving and you're like, what's going on back there?
What are you doing? Compressions? What?
Why can't I do that?
I'm like,
yeah. I think it's a nice break, you know, because being back there sometimes can be more stressful because you're trying to help the medic, right? Do whatever they need to do. But yeah, it's I think it's really cool. It's really cool stuff that we get to do and be a part of. I will say, not to go back to what we dislike, but I do dislike the lack of respect that a lot of EMTs do get. I understand that, you know, a lot of that comes with the size of our scope, the standard of EMTs, and, you know, just like any field, there's really good EMTs and there's really bad EMTs, right? And so I do understand that that comes with it sometimes, but I think 4 days ago, this EMT in New York was stabbed by a patient. Yeah. So what happened was they got called to a cardiac arrest and they picked up this patient and went to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, he took out the knife in his pocket and stabbed the EMT.
The cardiac arrest guy? Mm-hmm. They got Rosk and then they had to
he didn't have, I don't think he actually was going in like cardiac arrest. I think the call came in as a cardiac arrest, but he was having like chest pain or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't necessarily know the details of it, but you know, he wasn't like actively dying as far as I know.
Wow.
But she got stabbed in like the abdomen and the leg. And there was
multiple times.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I think, you know, I understand that there's only so much that you can do for our safety, but you know, that the lack of respect, the way that we get treated a lot of times by the public when we're just trying to help. So that's, I guess, something that I dislike about it. Yeah, which is
that's fair.
A fair point, I would say. I shouldn't have to fear for my safety.
No, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. What about you?
What I dislike?
Yeah. Add one more thing, so I don't sound like I don't
like
sound like a complainer. Yeah. The pay. Retention.
Actually, yeah. So we get paid very little for the things that we do, and the amount of calls and the times that they run us to the ground, like they could pay us more.
Do you think the argument that because we didn't go to school for very long applies?
No, I don't think
Yeah?
so. No, because we're out here like dealing with people's lives.
Yeah.
And regardless of how long the school is, we're doing it. And we're seeing all these crazy things. And it's just lots of hours, lots of grueling hard work.
Right.
And we get paid very little.
Yeah. No, that's fair. There's this running joke that In-N-Out workers get paid the same as we do. But don't get me wrong. In-N-Out workers, like...
Hey, they get busy.
No,
they get busy, especially
I
when
have all
go
the
through
respect
there.
for In-N-Out workers. This is not a dish at In-N-Out workers. I love you. I love In-N-Out.
It's a dish more of how we get paid.
Yeah, basically. But anyways, we're done with the negative Nancy part. Let's talk about something, that fulfills you. What is something like a story or experience as an EMT that has been really rewarding for you? I know a lot of people want to hear about our stories, so we'll give you a little sneak peek of it today.
So when we're out in the field, we don't ever know what happens with our patients.
Yeah.
And it's rare when we do. So this particular story, I had just gotten off of work. I was
With me?
Yeah, with you. I was going home. I was still in my uniform. And on the other side of the street, there's a bunch of cars. And I'm like, oh, this early in the morning, it must be a car accident. I get closer. There's a guy that was on a bike, collapsed. So I was like, oh, this is not a car accident. Because there was no damage or anything. I get to him. This man is blue. This man is a Smurf. And then I start doing compressions on him. He has vomit on him, so I can't do any ventilation.
Yeah.
And then a cop comes by. And he's like, do you need any help? I'm like, yes, start doing compressions. At the same time, this lady in a big truck, she comes. She's like, hey, my husband has a go bag. Do you need it? I look at that lady. I was like, yes, throw it to me. Like super dramatic. So she she jumps off of a really tall truck, throws the bag at me. I catch it, set it down, and then I grab the BVM and start ventilating.
So wait, but for the people who don't know all of these terms, a go bag is our medical go bag.
Yeah, it's like a bag that has the essentials that you need.
Yeah. And then a BVM is a bag valve mask. And it's basically what you see. It's like a little balloon.
Squeeze.
Yeah. And it, to give patients oxygen. Okay, continue.
So then we're doing the compressions, we're doing CPR, then fire shows up, they take over on the scene. And this is the part where I really, really enjoy this story because at the time they sent him to a certain hospital and they treated him. A couple days later, we work with a new nurse, which is Ali. And he tells me that he actually got the patient from the at the hospital. He was the one that received the patient. And he told me that because the CPR started so quickly, he actually made it.
I love this story.
Yeah.
It's funny because I heard this story before you found out he made it, right? Because after you did that whole thing and then he was transported to the hospital, you had gone back in your truck and drove off.
Just went home to sleep.
Yeah, and you immediately called me and you told me
did.
the story, and I was like, this is crazy, right? Holy crap! And then like I would say 4 or 5 days later, you told me that he had made it, and I was like, that's a super awesome story. Yeah.
What about you, Sunny? What story do you have?
I feel like my favorite stories have been being able to cheer up my patients, especially the pediatric ones, because I love children, and I don't know, the kids ones, it's really sad.
Yeah, because kids,
exactly. So
injured.
actually, I'll tell one of my most recent ones is the other day we were called to a TC, a traffic collision, and a Jeep had sideswiped a pickup truck, and the pickup truck just, got slammed straight into a semi truck. Those like big trucks. Yeah.
Dang.
And it just completely got totaled. And when we were first on scene, so when we got there, my partner, walked up to all of them. I was putting my helmet on. I walked out like with him, behind him. And all I see is the skeleton of this truck.
Yo.
Just like there's no top or anything really. It's just sitting there, and
like
I just
can
see
of sardines.
yeah, and I just see like a baby, like a baby car seat just sitting there, and then just like the baby just there. He was about like 4 years old or something like that. Like not like toddler like age, right? And the baby wasn't crying or anything either, so it was just like crazy to me, right? And so I'm walking. He actually starts crying when he first sees me.
I would have been offended.
I was like, oh no. I was like, hey, like it's okay, like it's okay. And then the dad is, you know, comforting like his son or whatever, and the kid.
Or
whatever. Whatever, you're not important to me.
Right.
And anyways, so the firefighters extricated him, and like, you know,
What's
we got him.
extricated?
It's basically remove patient from vehicle, basically, or not just vehicle, anything, like anything anything that they're trapped in, right? And so, you know, we took them into like the ambulance, and they were fine. Like they were like given
That's crazy. No broken bones or anything.
I no, like given the mechanism of injury, they were fine. Wow. And yeah, they had, you know, like surface level abrasions and whatnot, but that's besides the point. The whole point was that this baby was sitting there, and he was shaking. You know how when you get into a car accident, you like have that adrenaline, your body shakes. I could see his body shaking, and I was that made me very sad. But he was the cutest little kid. He was so cute. Honestly, I got tunnel vision. You know, like yes, like I did my we did our quick rounds and like, you know, checked on the other ones. But I was like, this kid is so cute.
He is my priority.
Yeah,
protect them.
He was like our priority patient. But, you know, I was sitting there, and he grabbed his dad's hand, which had, you know, blood on it. Nothing too serious, but blood. And he picked it up, grabbed his dad's hand, and then handed it to me, and was like basically telling me to fix his dad's hand.
That's so cute.
I was so cute. He was and looked so worried. Like his eyebrows, you know, when like little kids are worried, their eyebrows are like this, and they're like.
That's so cute.
And I was like, okay, hold on, okay. And then so I go grab a bunch of Band-Aids, and I just put Band-Aids. I put Band-Aids on his little cut right here, you know. I put Band-Aids all over him, and he was just the cutest little kid, and I just want to hug him. My partner put his helmet on the little kid just because he wanted to try it, and you know, it was just like, it's like bedside manner like care. I think a lot of times, like, yes, the part of EMT that a lot of people are excited about, like your story, like that's like the crazy stuff, like we want to see that. But I think sometimes like what resonates with me too on top of that is, you know, the interactions I have with my patients, being able to calm them down or just be I don't know, that person for them in like this time. So that's really cool to me. Yeah.
Watch that kid grow up to be an EMT.
I was thinking that.
Changing the future one at a time.
Yeah, he was just so cute. He would look after I put the Band-Aids on him, he would like stick his hand out. He was like sitting on his dad's lap, and he would like look at me, and he'd be like, and then I would just like hold his hand. He was so cute. Yeah.
Cute.
So
I think the cutest part about it is that he was also injured, but cared more about his dad.
Yeah, he cared. It broke my heart. I was like,
you're
such
selfless.
a good kid. I was like, you're so pure. I love you. But yeah, I think that's something that I really enjoy is the interactions I get to have with all sorts of different patients, and so I think those are really memorable to me, the children ones, the pediatric ones.
Those are always really fun.
They're really sad and they're really rewarding. So yeah, I think that's like two sides of being an EMT. I think a lot of people want to see the crazy stuff, but honestly, sometimes those simple interactions really make the job. Yeah.
It's unexpected.
Yeah,
ones.
definitely. So I don't know. Do you have any patients that have really like stuck out with you because of their personality or the way they responded?
There was a patient that we would always get, and he was really cool because he was disabled.
Yeah.
Like they amputated his legs, but that didn't stop him.
Yeah.
He was crawling around everywhere. He was climbing stuff. And I was like, wow, nothing's stopping you. You're still mobile.
No, genuinely. Yeah. It's like you gain almost inspirations from some of your patients for the way that they respond to certain things or like what's going on with them. And it's just really inspirational, I would say.
It's like nothing stops them.
Yeah. Are there any personality characteristics or qualities that you think are really kind of crucial to be a EMT?
To be EMT. You have to be able to for sure think under super stressful situations. So
to almost enjoy it too.
Almost. No, 100%. Because I've seen EMTs, they're new and something critical happens and it's like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah. They're just like,
and like it's okay if that happens in the beginning, like there's always a learning curve, but to be able to do the job successfully you need to be able to get over that.
I definitely agree. I think dealing with stress well, actually enjoying it, honestly, because a lot of us do. Like we actually do enjoy the high stress.
We're kind of crazy.
I'll honestly say that it's like there's a threshold. You get accustomed to that level of stress and then you're like, I don't really feel anything. You got to get to the next level. You just get higher and higher and higher, right?
Always seeking the adrenaline rush.
The adrenaline rush. Being able to deal with the lack of sleep, be able to function, with fatigue. And
I think it's like a running joke or something that we always say is that everybody in EMS basically has ADHD.
They're just like, something's not wired right in their heads. It's definitely the ability to do multiple things at once, right? Be able to
10 steps ahead.
Be able to anticipate people skills. So that's the thing, is this job is very social. Definitely are talking to people 24/7. It's not a job where you just sit by yourself. And
and it's funny that you bring that up, because when people are in pain or injured, they're having the worst time of their life. It's like the worst day ever. And if you're out there freaking out and like worrying and like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, you have to have a good demeanor. You have to carry yourself and show them that you're confident, and then they get a peace of mind.
Exactly. And I think that my mom, it's funny that you say that, because my mom always says, she's like, I don't understand how you do that. If that was me, I'd be the next patient. I'd have a mental breakdown because I'm so stressed and sad about the situation. Like, she was like, I would sit there and cry with them. And because my mom is a very, very empathetic. She really feels what like the other person is feeling, like times 10. Like, honestly, more than like what the other person is feeling. So she absorbs their emotions, right? And I would say that's another quality, is being able to kind of separate.
Although when it's a patient that can't decide for themselves and fend for themselves, and you pick them up from a facility that is not taking care of them, we are going to fight for them. We're going to...
Right. But that's different. It's not like you getting wrapped up in your emotions with them, but it's like you obviously caring about your patient and advocating for them, but not like necessarily like being
like all emotion based.
Right. Yeah. So I guess, being able to separate the two, do right by your patient because you care about them, but not let it get in the way of your job. So it's like that separation and ability to do that. I think I've also met a lot of EMTs who have learned to do all of these qualities or improve these qualities when they became an EMT. They didn't necessarily like were the best at all of these things, but I've seen that, like, because even for me, I definitely am pretty social to begin with, but I've become a lot more social due to it. So I think there are a lot of things that we can get into with EMS. Today was really just a introductory.
It's like a broad.
A little broad insight into our journey as an EMT, but we'll do a few more episodes on this topic because I know a lot of you guys want to hear about it, and we promise we'll get into it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this brief umbrella summary of why we're here.
Yeah.
And how we got here. And that's basically it.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening and watching to Egg
and Bean
Podcast.
Podcast.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.